Hello, and welcome to the Sales, Wellness, and Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Fazell. This podcast will bring you cutting edge sales strategies from top performers and executives in the tech industry, as well as insights from wellness experts on creating and maintaining a balance in your personal and professional lives. My goal is to provide you with great weekly content so that you can gain valuable insight to help you be the best version of yourself. So, without further delay, let's get started. My guest today is Jim Huling. Jim is the author of the #1 worldwide best-selling book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, now in its second edition and translated into 16 languages. Jim has also been the 4 Disciplines of Execution Global Managing Consultant for Franklin Covey for more than 13 years, where he has led the coaching of more than 70,000 leaders around the world. Before this time, Jim served over a decade as CEO of an organization recognized 4 times as one of the 25 best companies to work for in America. Jim has given over 500 presentations in 13 countries as a sought-after keynote speaker. He is also the author of Choose Your Life, his work-life integration and success book that has sold consistently since 2007. So Jim, thank you so much for being here with me today. I greatly appreciate you taking the time.
Scott, it is a real honor. I had a chance to get to know you a little bit. So I've not only had a first impression that you're an awesome and great guy, somebody I'd love to have a conversation with, which is what we're going to do today. But I also got the impression from you that you're on an important mission, and your mission was so captivating that, Scott, I kind of wanted to be part of it. So let's have that conversation today and hope that it furthers your ability to do the great work that you've set out to do in the world.
Well, I greatly appreciate that, Jim. Yeah, it really is. And that's one of the things that I kind of want to touch on with you first. And you know what, I tell you what, before I get ahead of myself, because I'll have a tendency to do that as well. Why don't you, for people that are listening in, that will be listening, if you don't mind, just give a quick background, Jim. I shouldn't say quick, however long you want to take on, where you've been, kind of your journey and what you're doing now and your projects. Obviously, we're going to dig into the 2 books. But do you mind giving just a quick background?
I don't mind at all. I promise you it'll be the least interesting part of the podcast today, so I'll get through it the fastest if I can. But Scott, I'll be 70 years old in a few months, and I've had a long and wonderful career and done a lot of things that I'm proud of. But when you summarize them, they kind of fall into 3 boxes. I have a nice long period of my life where, like so many of the people who listen to your podcast, I sort of worked my way up the ladder, one rung at a time, paid the hard price, traveled more than I should have, had a lot of road food, all those kinds of things we do on the way up. And that was a wonderful chapter of my career. It took me all the way from being a beginning programmer to being CIO of 2 multi-billion-dollar companies. And then the second chapter was, based on that long time in technology, I was given an opportunity to be CEO of a really wonderful technology company. So I spent 11 years as CEO of a company that 4 times was named one of the 25 best places to work in America, and ended up having an astronomical growth during the years that I was there. So not making that my accomplishment, we all did that together, but a wonderful period. And then I had this opportunity to go to make a pivot in my life. I really reached the point as a CEO where the only way to say it, although it's so overused nowadays, I just really burned out. 11 years as a CEO, Scott, this, they're like dog years. It's like 70 something years, and I just reached a point where I was exhausted and also needed something different. And so at that moment, I made a pivot in my life based on going in the direction, not of what would bring me the greatest success, but what would bring me the greatest joy. And I ended up writing a little book about that journey, which I think you and I may talk about today, called Choose Your Life. But that took me over into what really was the greatest professional chapter I've ever had. 14 years of working for Stephen Covey and the Franklin Covey organization as their global managing consultant. I got to write a couple of books while I was there as well. And just an incredible time, to be soaked in all that beautiful, powerful wisdom that the Franklin Covey organization had. And then last of all, 2 years ago, I decided to, quote, retire My sweetheart thinks that's the funniest thing that I say because I'm still probably working 25 hours a week, but I have a fully fledged coaching business, about 27 executives that I coach one-on-one every month, and I'm really loving this very newest chapter of my life where I work one-on-one with people. So those four blocks hopefully give everybody just a sampling at least of the kinds of things I've done in my career.
No, that's perfect, Jim. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, and that's the other thing that when we talked initially, being you being a part of in that CI role, technology, NCE roles, CEO roles, which is such a big part of what the sales, wellness, and performance platform is about. Because of my background being in sales, in technology sales especially, and the thing that I'm the most passionate about and what I'm trying to build is and not just sales, a lot of high pressure jobs. I mean, and in life in general, we just see so many people that are with the stress and anxiety, the work life balance. And when all those things happen, especially you talk about a work life balance, the family life deteriorates. And then just as an individual, you're not going to be your best self. So, I always like to think of a world, what would a world look like that everyone really understood how it was to incorporate mindfulness into their daily practice, right? So two things I like to try to make sure the mindfulness helps sales individuals in particular and in life, but to deal with rejection, to understand how to go into situations. And when our mind's focused and level set, we can deal with anything and we can think clearer and just be more successful. And so that's a big part of what the platform is about. It's great to talk to you because not only do you bring so much wisdom from what you've done and the books you've been a part of, but your background was an executive in those types of roles. So firsthand leading those organizations and the kind of stress and, as you mentioned earlier, burnout that can
Oh, sure.
that can
In fact,
provide.
from the day I met you, Scott, I've had a little bit of um, wondering why your methodology and your app wasn't available when I was in that burnout situation. I think I wouldn't, maybe I would have skipped that chapter if I'd had access to tools and wisdom like what you're about to bring to the world. So I think it's profoundly important, the work that you're doing. And I love that you have a passion for people who are in business development or sales roles. You can hear it when you speak. You kind of light up, when you talk about it. And I really get that. I think that's home court for you. But I love it when you talk about your mission is broad enough to include high performance roles. Because I think everybody I've known, and I've never thought about this more than the last 2 years when I've been an executive coach to a lot of people one-on-one, they need the same set of tools. They're facing the same challenges. They're working hard. They're failing to replenish the machine that enables them to work hard, and they're losing the game not only on a physical level but on a psychic level. How can you rally yourself? When you've got an empty tank, how do you get your highest performance? You can't do it. So there's a whole section of the world who desperately needs what you're trying to bring to them, and so that's why I'm pretty excited to be here on this podcast with you, my friend.
Oh, perfect, Jim. Thank you for that. So let's talk a little bit about Choose Your Life. And you kind of give a little bit of, you finished, you had that burnout in your career. Was that kind of the catalyst there, Jim, where you just said, hey, this is, how did you get to the point you said, I'm going to write a book about this?
It's an old joke, Scott, that most of the people who write books write them because they're trying to understand what they themselves just went through.
Sure,
And I
sure.
think there's a lot of truth to that. But to tell the story in a simple way, because it would take too long in the long way, I think. I had 11 years as a CEO. 9 of those years were fantastic. I was really happy, engaged. I was working hard. We were achieving great results. Everybody was winning. It was just a great period. But what began to happen to me in that time was a thing that honestly I think happens to a lot of people. That I started to realize that success by itself was just not enough. And that doesn't mean that I'm trivializing success. Everybody out there who's working hard to take care of themselves and the people that they care about and are happy to trade some hours for some dollars and make that equation work. That's honorable. I totally, respect all of that. I did that myself. But I would want to tell everybody that there does come a point when it's just not fulfilling. And even though you might make more money, you might get a bigger raise, you might have a larger territory, you might get a better title, maybe you move into the corner office, whatever it is, there's a diminishing return on those rewards so that they satisfy you less and less and less. And eventually you get to the point where if you just keep doing it, which is what I did, you have nothing left to give it. You just literally don't want to do the work. And I don't mind telling you, as a layer on the very top of that, there's also a kind of high performers guilt that comes along too. I mean, you got a great job when a lot of people would love that job. You're making a great income when a lot of people would love to be making that income. You have some prestige or some, notoriety. Maybe you're getting your 10 minutes of fame, whatever it is. From the outside, it looks fantastic. But what people don't see is that from the inside, you're sort of getting hollowed out. And at the end, you're just this shell, but down on the inside, there's just nothing left there. And it's because I think, Scott, and I think this is what you are really on in your life and your work, that there's a point where success is just not enough. And you start longing for significance. You start longing to feel like you're doing something that matters, you're really making a difference in the world. Because I promise you this, if you stop today and you look back across your whole career, you can add up all the hours, you can add up all the dollars, you can stack all your trophies and your plaques in your office. You can do all of that, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's great stuff. But it won't take you into the next chapter. You cross a line where success is no longer the ultimate goal. And you start asking yourself these deeper questions like, does it really matter what I do? Am I making a difference? Am I actually helping anybody? I mean, I know I'm making a lot of money and I'm hitting my quota, but am I doing good work? Is this how I want to be remembered? All of those questions start to circulate. And literally that's what happened to me. In a story too many people have heard, Scott, I'm sitting in my office at midnight, all by myself. Everybody else has gone home. I'm sitting there alone. I don't want to go home because I am determined to find out what's wrong with me. And thank goodness there was nobody there. Even the cleaning crew had gone home, Scott. I'm sitting alone in my office, one little light bulb on, and I just sort of yell out, into my office. This is not the life I want. I am not happy. I just said it out loud, Now, I was probably aware there was nobody to hear me, so it was a safe thing to do. But I am not happy. And Scott, I say this with some humor, but maybe some poignancy too. If you shout a question to the universe, you need to be ready because the universe may very well answer. And literally the answer that came back to me was, well, when have you been happy? It's a profoundly stunning question. I'm not happy. Okay, well, when have you been happy? And that question by itself started me on a journey that night. Of course, you've read this, so you know the story, but to finish it, I just started, I became a detective in my own life. And I started to go back through all the experiences I'd had, asking myself, which ones all along the way did I feel joyful? Did I feel effortless? Was I doing something that I would have gladly done all day? In fact, Scott, today I call this the 5 rights. So in my whole life, I found the moments when I was the right person, doing the right thing in the right way with the right people for the right reasons. 5 rights. If I can check those 5 boxes, I got a moment. And then when I collect those moments, and at the end, I had 20 of them. In a 32-year career at that point, I had 20 moments. Now, first of all, let that sink in a minute. 20 moments in a 32-year career when I was exactly the right person doing the right thing in the right way, the right people for the right reason. But I took those things together, and amazingly, 15 of the 20 were times when I was speaking to a group of people about something I passionately believed in that I thought would help them. 15 out of 20. I'm a CEO, and 15 out of my 20 moments. And by the way, and I'm sad about this part of the story, I didn't have a single moment as a CEO when everything was right. I'd not had one. I'd had some good moments, and I worked with a bunch of great people for a wonderful organization. I have nothing but good things to say. But for me, from the inside out, there was almost nothing that was feeding my soul. I was feeding my bank account, but not my soul, right? So when I finally got in touch with that, I have a friend who likes to say a blinding flash of the obvious. I had a blinding flash of the obvious that the 15 out of 20 best moments of my career so far had all been when I was doing exactly what I'm doing right now. So I pivoted my whole life in that moment, went to work for the greatest training company in the world, Franklin Covey, eventually became their global managing consultant, and I ended up teaching and coaching more than 70,000 people in the 14 years that I was there. But that pivot would never have happened if I hadn't reached that crucible moment and been willing, to ask the tough questions and see where they would take me.
That's amazing, Jim. That really is. Thank you for sharing that. And two things that really stick out to me that it was enough, because a lot of people may get that feeling of something's not right.
Right.
They're not fulfilled.
That's
But how long does it take them to finally get to a point? And again, same thing with me. It didn't happen right away. I didn't like all of a
right.
sudden just say, "Hey," but you finally had the courage, right, to say, "Hey, I'm not going to, this isn't, something's bothering me enough." And you ask that question, like you said, you better be careful when you ask it with the answer you're going to get. And so I think that's great. I mean, you took the time, because a lot of people change. We're all scared of change, and we feel
Sure.
like,
Sure.
just like you said, you're
That's
you're
right.
you're you're in
That's
a
so true.
position. And I was exactly, you mentioned another thing that hit me. You almost felt guilty because,
Mm-hmm.
gosh, who am I? I'm making
Mm-hmm.
really good money that so
Mm-hmm.
many people would probably die to be able to make, and be in the position
That's right.
working for amazing companies, and just being able to travel and go to events and all those things that come with it. But and I don't know if this hits everybody, but I know with me deep down, especially over the last few years, when I was in those roles, there was something there, and it started to affect my performance as
Of
well,
course it
because
did.
I wasn't fully engaged.
Mhm.
And so one of the things too, kind of went on the journey that you talked about.
Mhm.
I really said, and because I've made some of those decisions in the past. Of course, my
Mhm.
wife would probably like to knock me over the head a couple of times, like, "Hey, you're jumping into stuff." This was over the last several years before I finally figured this out. You're jumping into stuff just to jump. And I
That's right.
did.
You hit a really good point there, because a lot of people get into that crucible moment and they think the only thing they can think of that they want is something different.
Something
And
different.
that's not really the answer.
Right.
If you're a vice president here and you become a vice president over there, the first 6 months may be different. And then you're going to say, well, wait a minute. Now I'm right back where I was, except I've
That's right.
changed. So the beautiful thing is, Scott, is my language around it, but I hope it's acceptable, is sometimes sometimes we solve a problem through our analytical prowess. People like you that are really smart can sit down and make a list of the pros and a list of the cons, talk to a few counselors, read a book, make a map, go for it. But what does happen over time is that those decisions that are made solely from the mind, solely from our ability to intellectually add up the pros and the cons and just make a math decision, those choices become less and less effective, because the mind will lead you astray. The
Mm.
mind will say, well, it's 10% more money, I got a reserved parking place, it's a shorter commute. The mind will, like a defense attorney, will argue everything it can think of, but the heart says something different. So, Scott, in my coaching, and I know this is a little bit radical, I hope it's not radical for your podcast, is I end up saying to the executives I coach, who, by the way, are right where I was, can we quiet your mind and then open your heart? Let's don't think about the problem anymore. Let's feel our way into it. When
Right.
you think about this, does that bring you joy? When you think about this, does that feel heavy? Does that feel like more work? Or when you think about this, does that feel exciting? Does that feel like an adventure? So it's been said before by smarter people than me, but the longest journey of a life is 12 inches from the mind to the heart. And if we can just drop down to that place and answer our questions from that place, the answers we get are far superior to the ones just from the math we do intellectually.
Love that. Yeah, that's great. That's great. And just again, taking the time that you have to take sometimes, just to, because you'd have to put thought into it. You really
Sure.
do. And
Oh,
that's what I had to do. I actually did the same thing, Jim, from a
mhm.
standpoint. I had to start writing down,
Yes.
what am I good at, what have I done, because I was venturing into things that I didn't have any expertise in really, and thinking, well, that's going to change. Or maybe I go and maybe I get out of technology sales and go into another sales, role, and that's not going to change. So you really did. You had to figure out, well, what are the things you're good at, and what are you really passionate about? And that's kind of, how you combining those things and bringing it together. I tell you it's interesting too, the way things happen, because I remember at the time, my sister gave me a book on my birthday, and I was probably only 2 weeks into this process of really trying to figure out, and it was The Greatness Mindset, by Lewis, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, Howes or Hose, Howes. I don't
Right.
know, great book. And so
Great
that
book.
it's
Great book.
interesting how that things happen like that. And then when I got that book, and then I kind of dug into that a little bit, it was the right time, and that really kind of helped, to speed
Oh
things
gosh,
along for me.
aren't we
Yeah,
blessed when a book will come into our life? You can argue whatever philosophy or system of faith you happen to adhere to. I'm not here today to offer any one of those. Whatever you believe is great, but you cannot deny that there is some compassionate force in the universe that in the
absolutely.
exact moment you needed some guidance and you were open to it, a book or a teacher or a person or a podcast like this one
Yeah,
happens across your path, and you're going this way, and you suddenly you turn and you start going
that's
this
right.
way. You just can't deny that. Scott, I have this I now sort of have a specialty area in my coaching, and most of my clients are not as old as me. It would be hard to be older than me, but they're all in their 40s, somewhere in there, and they're asking some of these same questions, some a little older, some a little younger. But when they are looking for a kind of a roadmap, I wonder if you would mind. I offer them 4 questions just to get started. Just go away. You don't have to have a coaching session with me. Here's the 4 questions. Find your answers to these questions, then come back and I'll help you make a plan out of what you want to do. It's one of my most basic aspects of the course. And I offer them to your audience just freely today. See if they're helpful to anybody. 4 questions that, if you find the answers to them, will probably give you a sense of direction where you want to go. And the first one you've already said: what am I gifted to do?
Mhm.
What was I born with or have developed a giftedness for doing? Not can I do it, but do I want to do it? What was I gifted to do? So that's a powerful question, and it relates to what your strengths are, what your experiences are, all powerful. Second question is, who do I feel drawn to serve? Now, this one is hard, Scott, for most people, because it's a humility question. It's now all of a sudden we're not thinking about career in terms of getting, we're thinking about career in terms of giving. Who am I drawn to help? Do you light up when you work with young people? Or do you come alive when you work with midlifers who are trying to make that big pivot to the next chapter? Do you love really people right out of college? Who are you drawn to help? That's a powerful question. It'll take you a long way when you do that. And then third question is, what is my purpose? Why do I think I'm here? I have a lot of friends who say the most difficult question for everybody to answer is, why was I born? And it really is, if you take it to its depth. And then last of all, what legacy do I want to leave? What is the outcome? Steve Jobs said, I think I'll probably butcher this. He said, live your life in such a way that you make a dent in the universe. I love that. I may
Yeah,
be misquoting him slightly, but I love that quote.
right. Yeah,
That's what I think about that fourth question. What impact do I want to leave? I want to leave with a whole bunch of people who would say, my life is different because an old guy named Jim helped me with this, or taught me this, or wrote a book about this. I want to leave those little dents all over the place so that I can look back and say, all right, I see where my impact was. I see that it made a difference. Those 4 questions, I'm sorry if I said them too fast. They're helpful. I think they might be helpful to a lot of people listening to you and me today.
no, that's great, and I'll make sure too that I'll obviously have the notes that I can share too,
Thank you.
on the platform for sure. No, that's very insightful. Thank you for sharing that. And I think whenever I look at it like I mentioned, when what if people, most individuals knew how to kind of help control things, and anxiety, and bring mindfulness and all that in. I know that you've been a big part of and it's been another book I'm reading now. And I know I want to get into other books, but your friend Brian Johnson and that
Oh
Arte,
man,
that's just a
oh man.
great. I'm
He's a
so
powerful guy and a man
it,
on a mission. Let's go ahead and
absolutely.
endorse him fully, can we? Because
Yes,
Arte by
absolutely.
Brian Johnson. I was privileged to write a nice endorsements right on the inside
Yes, I
front
saw
cover
that.
of the
Yep,
book. I'm a big fan of his. I think this is a guy who is living what we're talking about.
that's
He's on
right.
purpose. He knows what he wants to be doing, and the more of it he does, the more fulfilled he feels.
That's
You know,
it.
like sometimes the more of your job you do, the more drained you feel. But when you flip that over to work on purpose, the more energy you give, the more you seem to get back. It almost fuels itself. And he is right in the center lane of that idea.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And it's just one of those things that you wonder if the world or a big portion of it could have that thought process and that mindset,
That's right.
how amazing, things could be, how different things
Yeah.
could be in the world that we live in now.
Yeah. If we could wave
Um,
our magic wand, we would do it
yeah,
that way. And I love that. You know, if you don't mind, I'll put just a capstone on that of saying one
sure.
of the things I love about him, but I feel very much in terms of vocabulary for people listening to us today, liking what they hear, but saying, well, okay, what do I do with that idea? I think this idea of living an intentional life, that's where the power is.
That's it.
I've thought long and hard and written lots of pages in my life about what kind of a dad I wanted to be, what kind of a husband I wanted to be. I'm fortunate enough, been married to the love of my life for 42 years, but I'm still
Fantastic.
working hard on becoming the husband I wanted to be and the friend I wanted to be, as well as the leader and the coach and the writer. And as you craft that vision, you then have a target. It's like programming your GPS. You can say, I want to go from where I am today as a teacher to this place as a teacher. Okay, great. Now I'm on path. And all I've got to do is take a series of small steps consistently, and I'll eventually look back and say, wow, I went from here to here. But if I don't ever have that sense of where I want to go, then it's like driving your car and always turning left at every intersection. You'll wind up somewhere, but it won't likely be the place you intended.
That's a great point. That's kind of what I think. That's a great segue to kind of talk a little bit about
Mm.
that. I try to help, especially again, sales professionals or anyone that's got, we all have our daily goals, but one of the things that I found
Mm.
myself doing, you wake up every day, and first of all, that's one of my favorite things. I've developed. I say developed. That's I shouldn't say that. I've put together. I didn't come up with these, of course, but put together like 50 rules that I love, that I kind of love to live by, and they'll be part of the app as well.
Mm.
One of them is begin each day with intentionality.
Yeah.
I feel like if you could wake up and everyone could say that and have that, it's just such a powerful. So I do every day. I try to just remember that. Hey, begin this day with intentionality. So I think
Yeah.
that's so powerful. Um, and one of the things, though, I think I lost my train of thought though by saying that, where I was going with that.
Well, can I join you in that thought?
Sure,
Because
yeah, of course.
I myself have a little tiny, it's not as eloquent as yours, but a little tiny methodology I've used for almost 35 years. Same thing every morning. I call it 3 by 3. And in the morning, I just write down on here's a card for today. I write down on a note card 3 things I'm grateful for, 3 things I'm excited about in the day ahead, not out in the future, in the day ahead, and 3 things I'm absolutely committed to doing before the day ends. So 3 by 3. But if you think about that, that's a recipe that has gratitude, passion, and commitment all blended together. And just that little formula alone has been revolutionary in my life and in the lives of my clients where I've been able to share it. Something as simple as that. They're all versions of intentionality. Your app is going to be a powerful tool. I can't wait to be a passionate user of your technology and your wisdom, my friend. But anything at all that you can do that says, I want to live my life in a particular way, you're already on a good path. You don't have to make it complicated. It can be things that are as simple as that.
That's right. That's right. It's another thing too. It's funny with Thanksgiving just passing.
Mm,
I had, and one of the things, this came from Brian's book,
mm,
and there was a chapter in there about if you were to write down 5 things that you're thankful for, right? I think once a day for once a week for 10 weeks. I might be getting that wrong.
mm,
Um, just the things that you're thankful for, 5 of those, think there's about a 25% chance you're going to be happier. You're just going to feel happier.
Yeah.
You're going to sleep better.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I even made my in-laws that when they came to dinner, I said, you're gonna sit down. My 7-year-old and I said, she was the only one that knew about it. I said, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna give grace and all that, but we're gonna also make sure that we surprise everybody. They're gonna give them a pad, a little piece of paper. They got to write down 5 things, and it caught
Nice.
some of them off guard, but it was a good exercise.
Nice. I
So
think you're so right that we all have lives, no matter whether they're hard or easy lives, that are filled with blessings so consistently that we've forgotten about them.
yes,
Good health is an example. If you've had good health for a string of years, like I have, you can run real danger of taking for granted good health. The same thing with good friends. If you have good friends and you don't reinvest in those friendships, you can run the very real risk of losing those friendships and then saying, oh my gosh, I miss these people. So to be intentional about those things, which is one of your themes. I've loved how you've amplified that back to me. Is one of the most powerful ideas we have. Just know what it is you're trying to do, and then set on that path every day to go get it. You're never going to be perfect, but
that's
you're
right.
never also going the other way or losing your way. You're always on purpose. That's a powerful way to live.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you talk about health.
Hmm.
And you just turned 70, right, Jim? Which,
Yes.
I mean, again, amazing. I think you look amazing. I
Oh,
love
thank you. Thank
when
you.
we first talked, the thing about you picking up the rocks, and I want you to talk a little bit about that, because I love that. I mean, anything like that I see, I'm such a motivational guy too. If
Oh,
I
yeah.
see anything that I'm like, look at that. See,
Oh,
I still got, some years to do that I can know that just gives me motivation
oh,
seeing you
sure.
do that.
Well, you're being kind now because you're a very athletic guy and you're probably way, way beyond me. I've forgotten who said this, but I want to say Martin Luther King, but I don't remember exactly. But they said, when you're on purpose, all of your life is a ministry. And I really like that idea that if you're on purpose, it kind of doesn't matter what you're doing. It can have a beneficial impact to a lot of people. Well, here I am, I'm not the oldest living CrossFitter in the world for sure. There's some remarkable people older than me, but at my age, and for everybody listening on audio, I have a full head of solid gray hair. When you see somebody with my gray hair and my age picking up, a barbell, or in my case, I love those stones,
Right.
round stones that I pick up. Just that alone, everybody says, "Who is that old guy? What is he doing?" But
Love
then
it.
when they do, I can get a message across to say, hey, don't let anybody put limitations on you. don't
That's it.
don't let anybody say what you can and can't do. You set your own standard of what's possible and what's not possible. And so I love that. I love CrossFit anyway. I've been in it 11 years now. Very passionate about it. But what I love mostly is it becomes another platform like you have for me to be able to say, okay, if I can grab your attention with this, I can slip a little message right in here. You know,
Right.
it fuel the engine that powers the car. The engine is your body. The car is your career. Fuel that engine, and one of the ways you do it is by exercising good health. If I can do that, it's worth everything to me. And I know
That's
you feel
perfect.
the same way because you're
Abs-
such an expert on health.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say expert, but I tell you, it's just something that I've always loved, and I think beyond anything, we have to do that, obviously, to keep us in good health. But more importantly, our bodies, our minds, right, is
Oh
the
yeah.
important part of that. It's funny. I was going to move in, if it's okay. I talk a little bit about um, the 4 disciplines of execution, and now I remember what I'd forgotten before when we talked about. And one of the first ones is focus on the widely important, right? That first discipline.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about? And that's what I was getting into a little bit. Is that in my past, I would have that, you know, whether it was a daily
Mhm.
goal or what I wanted to try to accomplish, but I would just jump right into things. Like I would start my day and not really have things
Mhm.
lined up the right way. Whether I was going to get on and start making sales calls or sending out emails, or and I really, what I talk to people about so much is that if you don't have that real intention and that focus of where you're trying to go daily, weekly and monthly and annually in a sales role, where you want to be, or in any role, you're just really, you're just out there kind of spinning. And I love that first rule or that first discipline where you kind of say, the more you try to do and accomplish, the less you usually can. Can you speak to that a little bit, Jim?
Oh gosh, yeah. And it's so you set it up so beautifully, though, Scott. Thank you. There's a very common syndrome, which is I'm unhappy with where I am, so I want to do something. And then the thing I want to do is everything I can think of all at once. And the third stage, which always follows, is this is overwhelming. I can't do any of it. Now, those three stages, that's the cycle I've dedicated a chunk of my life to trying to eradicate. It's the same idea. Would you ever get in your car, leave your driveway, and start going with no idea where you were trying to end up? You wouldn't do it, right? So why not approach life or business in that same way? So why not, for example, on Sunday night, carve out 15 minutes and say, in the coming week, what do I want to create? Do I want quality time with people at work who depend on me, who need my expertise? Yes. Well, let me block some time for that. Do I want time to exercise and keep my body healthy and hydrated? Yes. Let me block some time for that. Do I want a few minutes here and there to stay connected to the people I care about the most and just have a conversation or let them know I appreciate them or I love them or I'll be home soon or whatever that is? Yes. Let me put some little blocks on my calendar for those. Am I going to mentor somebody? Do I want to end up in my role being somebody who actually gave something back to somebody else instead of always just achieving for myself? Yeah. All right. Well, let me find 20 minutes in a week that I'm going to mentor somebody. Let me block that out. So you see what I'm illustrating with my words, how unbelievably intentional you can you can make your week if you want to get the most out of it. And then real fast, Scott, often I'll use an example like that with somebody I've just met, and their initial reaction will be, "Oh God, that's overwhelming. I don't
Mhm.
want to be all boxed in and have certain things I've got to do on certain days, and I don't want all that. I like the way I do it, where I just sort of flow through the week and see what comes." So all I can say back then is, "Well, how's that working? Are you happy? Are you the dad you wanted to be? Are you the friend you wanted to be? Are you the leader you wanted to be? Are you the performer you wanted to be?" And I mean, I'm not being hard on anybody when I say
Sure,
it.
sure.
I can half laugh, but inevitably they'll say, "Well, no, that's why I came to you as a coach." I'm like, well, all right. So if we want a different outcome, we got to reverse engineer into different actions. And the different actions are not complicated. It just says at the beginning of a week, map out the highest and best week you can imagine. And don't be unrealistic. Don't say I'm going to run a marathon every day when you haven't even bought any tennis shoes yet. But map out a week that would represent at the end of it something you would say, okay, I'm happy with that week. Now let's create another one next week. And that little bit of time, and I promise you, it never takes me more than 10 to 15 minutes to plan my week. I end up doing a lot of things that wouldn't get done otherwise. Things that I get to celebrate today are only happened because I put small actions into place months or even years ago and kept doing them consistently. That's really all there was to it.
That's it. Yeah, no, that's great. I think another thing, Jim, and we haven't talked about this, but a big part of kind of my belief system and the whole methodology that I like to talk to people about is, of course, bringing meditation in.
Yeah.
And you talked about flow with when you're giving
Yeah.
the example of the person. I just like to let it flow. Well, I found things will flow so much easier
Mm.
in the physical world, right?
Yeah.
If we
Yeah.
kind of set our minds
That's
in
right.
the spiritual world with meditation and where we want to be, what we want to accomplish.
Right.
I've just seen, speaking just for myself personally, just dramatic improvements because you're not out there
Mm-hmm.
just trying to force things, I guess,
Right.
right, to happen.
Right.
There's that, I really learned where it helped me, and it takes a lot of time to kind of start to really get this, especially when you talk about type A personalities. If you're talking about sales roles and any executive roles, it's tough. A lot of those people don't have that mindset to be like, all right, I'm going to calm myself down. I'm going to kind of use these types of principles. So I find that a lot, when I'm talking to people in those roles. And I always kind of consider myself not quite the typical sales person with those personalities. Maybe that's another one of the reasons why I knew there was something more there for me as far as really being able to help people.
Mm.
But I've just found that's such a game changer when you can really start to hone in on those skills again to help things flow a lot easier in the physical world. I know it's
I
been
think
life
this is I
changing.
think this is one of your great gifts that you bring, Scott. You know that you you have walked that path. So now when you want to help others who are walking a similar path, and I mean really the high performance path, sales and other professions, you have an ability to say, I've been there and I'm over here now. Can I offer you some thoughts that will help you? And you have the credibility to be able to do it. Now you're also got a world-class methodology, and you're launching an incredible app for technology support of all of it. You're going to make a huge difference in the world with the things that you're doing. But even just one human being to another, you have a kind of credibility that you can bring because you've been there. So no matter what, I think those years served you as the um, boot camp for what you're actually enlisted to do, what you're actually called to do. If you hadn't had that, you wouldn't. I feel the same way often about myself. If I hadn't been a CEO, I might not be quite as adept at coaching CEOs as I seem to be now. So even though those were hard years, and I'm glad they're over, and I don't want to do them again, I really
Right.
have to honor those years because they created a foundation for me to do something that I really is joyful for me. So I feel like you're in a very similar place with that, and that and if I can just say a word about meditation, I'm a huge fan of meditation, and I utilize meditation in two forms, and I think they're both things that you would endorse. One of them is meditation in the classic sense. So I normally have a seated meditation, and I normally try to empty my mind. I try to
Mm.
have a time of no thought at all, as much as I can. And believe me, it's no easier for me than it is for anybody else because my mind is pretty busy. So
Right.
that's a big task for me. I'm also a believer, and it's a very subtle difference in the practice of stillness. I have a lot of clients, Scott. If I say meditation, they're looking for another coach right away. They're like, I'm not
Mhm.
into all that. So
Right.
there's something a little too esoteric about that. But if I said to one this morning, I said, I'm not advocating meditation. Now, remember, it's just language, right? I'm not advocating meditation. I'm not trying to talk to you about that today. There'll be another day we'll talk about that. All I want you to do is in the course of every day, find 12 minutes of stillness,
That's
just
right.
stillness. Don't try to meditate. That's too fancy for you right now. Well, now, really, meditation and stillness can be, if they're approached they can be the same thing. And then they'll come back and say, well, okay, well, that's not hard. 12 minutes of stillness. I just like, okay, but it's not long. 12 minutes of stillness turns into the most powerful 12 minutes of their day because they reset, they recharge, they relax. Scott, I don't know if you'd agree with this, but a lot of the high performers I work with live in a constant state of threat assessment.
Hmm.
It's like they're scanning the horizon all the time. Is that taken care of? Have I got that? Did I respond to that? Did I get back in time? I've done the right thing. It's like the whole world is full of threats, and they're just constantly trying to avoid them.
Right.
And first of all, it saddens me that there are people who live that way, but there's a lot of them, and it just takes all your energy away, drains all your energy. Well, 12 minutes of stillness will drop the threat assessment. 12 minutes of stillness will return you to yourself. And even if you're living in the midst of challenges, it will remind you that you are strong, you are capable, you do have abilities. There is a way forward. It will bring you back to the no threat zone so that you can regroup and then go back out into the world as a whole different person. And I don't know if you would advocate a longer time. I'm sure longer is better, but for me, 12 minutes has been great for every client I've ever coached as a starting point.
I think that's perfect. So yeah, daily pauses, right? I call them the daily pauses. I think the 12 minutes is perfect because a lot of times I'll say, just take 2 minutes
Yeah,
throughout the day,
yeah, yeah.
frequently. before you get on a meeting, before you get on, just take 2 minutes, just
Yeah, I love it.
quiet yourself, focus on your breathing. I
Mm.
love how you kind of gear them, because some people just meditation's not their thing, or they're just not, it's just like something different, it's change and they're not used to it. I love how you just say, hey, just stay still.
Yeah,
Just don't think about anything. And that's hard enough. That's hard enough for some
that's
people,
hard
like you
enough. I
mentioned.
know it. Isn't that
But it
amazing? And
world
it
of
resets
difference
the
though.
whole system. Yeah. Oh, and I know your app is going to walk people through how to do that in a much more profound way than I'm doing with my simple language. But either way, your psychology is a reflection sometimes of your physiology. And when you can get your physiology to just calm down, your psychology can calm down too. So either way, however you approach it, what
That's
an
right.
incredibly beneficial thing to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jim, I know we're coming up a little bit time wise, and I just can't thank you enough for the time that you give me today. I know that the people listening are going to get so much out of it. Is there anything that you have on the horizon beyond coaching? Is there your
Oh,
next
sure.
project, or
Thank
that
you.
you're
Well, you're
passionate
very
about now
kind
you'd
to
like to
ask me.
share?
Yeah, today is all about your mission in the world and what a passionate supporter I am of the work you're doing, Scott. So I was honored to be here today just to bring my voice to a lot of other people who, like me, have become fans of you and what you're doing. So that was plenty. But I appreciate you offering me a chance for a last thought. I'd say two things, if I might, and hopefully they come across as non-commercial. One is I'm very active on social media. So almost every day of my life, I post something that I hope is a helpful thought for the living and creating of a great life and a great career. And I do it on all platforms. So it's Jim Huling, JimHuling, same on all platforms every single day. So LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Same post, by the way. So if you see it in one place, don't go looking in the other. It'll be just the same thing.
Right.
But at least it's my little bread on the water every morning, just to say I gave something out today. I hope it was helpful. And some days it is maybe a lot helpful, and other days maybe not so much, but it's always there if you need it. So I encourage everybody to follow me on those platforms if you would, if you want to see those daily quotes. And then the last thing of all, and I feel very passionate about this in this coming year, Scott. So I appreciate you giving me a last moment, and I hope I can say this well. The so many things in my life are coming together now in this 70th year of my own work, my own message. I'm writing another book that I hope to publish next year. And I've just got a lot going on that I feel like I'm not finished. But one of the distillation points where everything seems to come together is around this idea that when you have a choice to make about your life or about your career or about who you spend time with or who you live your life with or whatever, when you come to the crossroads intersection of your life and you have a choice to make, the thing that is coming to me now with great clarity is to remember that joy is a valid compass. We've talked about it today, but so much of the time we make choices in our lives based on the economics or the geography or what one of our mentors thinks we should do or what our parents think we should do. We come to these crossroads all the time, but we very seldom make our own choice. We're making these choices on all these other criteria, and the last one we think of is joy. And when my clients come to me and say, should I, hey, this is a new job, I'll have to move, I'll live in a different city, I'm going to do some different work, should I do it or not? They're always stunned when, as an old CEO, I have no spreadsheet to offer them. I just simply start by saying, well, when you think about doing that, do you feel you'll have joy? Will you have joy? Not happiness, that's a different thing. Will you have joy in this choice? Will this choice lead? And inevitably, when we choose joy as our compass, we end up in a place where happiness is the life that we have. So my message to everybody is really just that. Build your trust in joy. Joy is a wonderful compass. And the more you navigate that way, yes, think about your strengths. Yes, think about your career. Yes, think about all those things. But don't forget in your equation to add joy in as the final compass point. And if I was only known for the rest of my life for that one piece of advice, Scott, I think I'd be pretty happy because I think
I,
that's
I it's fantastic, Jim. I don't know if I'm stretching here if that has anything to do with the book you're writing, but I hope it has something to do with it, because I can't wait to I can't wait to, of course, get it when you're done. I also want to let you know, you mentioned your posts, social media, and if they help, I can tell you, I've gotten, since you and I have become friends, love seeing your posts every day. To me, they bring a lot of value to me for sure. They're always meaningful. They always just have a great message that you know you come away with a smile on your face, and I always take the time to listen. And obviously I know that a lot of your followers feel exactly the same way, Jim. So you're doing so many amazing things, and I really appreciate you, appreciate the friendship that early on that we've developed here. And I just want to thank you again so much for taking your time to be on with me today.
Man, you're so welcome, and God bless you. You know, you're a man on a mission. You're setting out to do great work in the world, and I have no doubt that one day I'm going to brag about having been a little teeny tiny part on a podcast of this great mission that you were on, and talking about. I knew him when. I'm sure of that, Scott. So thank you
Well,
for what you're setting out to do.
that's very kind, Jim. I really appreciate it, buddy. Well, I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day, and look forward to speaking to you soon.
Yes, sir. See you soon.
All right. Take care, Jim. Bye bye.